Hello again, church. Time for the next Exodus mini. Today we're going to be looking at the fifth plague, the plague of the death of the livestock found in Exodus chapter 9, verses 1 to 7. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go in to Pharaoh and say to him, 'This is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, says. Let my people go so that they may worship me. But if you refuse to let them go and keep holding them, then the Lord's hand will bring a severe plague against your livestock in the field, the horses, donkeys, camels, herds, and flocks. But the Lord will make a distinction between the livestock of Israel and the livestock of Egypt, so that nothing of all that the Israelites own will die.' And the Lord set a time, saying, 'Tomorrow the Lord will do this thing in the land.' The Lord did this the next day, and all the Egyptians' livestock died, but none of the Israelites' livestock died. Pharaoh sent messengers who saw that not a single one of the Israelites' livestock was dead. But Pharaoh's heart was hard, and he did not let the people go." So as we continue on, now getting to the midpoint of the 10 plagues, I want to list off a handful of different gods that are potentially being addressed in this plague. In Egypt, as with the frogs, frogs are considered in Egypt, as I mentioned in the earlier plague. Frogs are considered special, right? And so there are different times, frogs are preserved and kept in the tombs with various kings and important figures and this, that, and the other thing. Same thing, very, very similar to this is cattle, is livestock. And within Egyptian mythology, within Egyptian, pantheon or worship of the gods of Egypt, we see quite a few different gods having cattle as a main reoccurring image throughout their within their worship. A couple of them, Bucus, who is the sacred bull of the city Hermonthis, which is a city that is connected to the sun god Ra, the chief god Ra. Menviz, I think I'm mispronouncing that one, but it's okay. He was worshipped. That's the god, the bull who is worshipped in Heliopolis, which is again another city connected to the sun god Ra. And then Apis, which is the bull of Memphis, who is not necessarily worshipped, but is connected to the god Ptah. Ptah is one of the creator gods, particularly found in the city of Memphis. Both Ra and Ptah are creator gods, are very important gods within Egyptian mythology, Egyptian pantheism. And both of them are at times, again, there is so much conflicting and various literature talking about the various gods within Egyptian mythology, right? And this is true of Greek mythology and all these ancient worldviews. But both, at different times, both Ra and Ptah are depicted as being in the form of cows, not even just the head of a cow, but actually coming and being embodied as bulls. Bulls are powerful. Bulls are virile. They're very fertile, right? And so a lot of the time, fertility is connected to bulls and cattle and that kind of stuff. Also, power is connected to the bulls because they're big and they're powerful and they're in their form. Another is Isis, which we'll actually talk about in the next plague. Isis is the queen of the gods. She is depicted with, is often depicted, not always, but often depicted with the horns of a cow. The one of particular note that I think is probably Hathor. Hathor often has the head of a cow here in this image. Does not have the head of a cow, but has the horns of a cow. And in the middle of the horns is the sun, because she's kind of holding up the sun. Hathor is a goddess of love, of beauty. Again, not things that we necessarily associate with cows, but this is, again, Egyptian mythology. Is also a mother, the god of motherhood, and a god of fertility, as I kind of already mentioned. One of her primary jobs as a god of motherhood, a mothering god, is to protect Pharaoh, who is in his own right a god, is seen as deity in Egyptian mythology. And what we find very interesting about this particular plague is now we're starting to move from just the culture of Egypt being addressed, the civilization of Egypt being addressed in the water turning to blood, in the frogs and the flies and the gnats. But now, as we get into this plague, what are we seeing? We're seeing Pharaoh himself being affected, not just by the annoyance of, say, the flies all over him, but the death of his livestock. His, not just livestock, but sacred livestock, important livestock. Add on to this the realities of the economic disaster that it is to have all of your livestock dying, all of your animals dying. Now, the conflict with this, or the question that is often raised with this, is, okay, later we're going to see that the Egyptians are warned, bring your livestock in. And there's kind of a handful of ways that we can understand this. Way number one, which is probably the most logical way, is that there is hyperbole going on here. There's exaggeration going on here. That not actually all of the animals of the Egyptians die, but just many of them, right? And so again, it's not saying that the scriptures are lying. It's just a part of sort of the genre and the literature that's going on here. That's potential. There's some sort of language going on here that maybe is indicating that only the animals that were, say, outside or inside of certain places, those are the ones that died, and the other ones that were inside didn't die. Maybe it's a little bit of a stretch. Also, there's no real indication on how much time is going by in all of this. Maybe the Egyptians bring the animals in from somewhere else at a later point, and that's what's going on. I tend to side on the first, which is that this is in a lot of ways hyperbolic language. It's not necessarily for us to understand this to be literally every single livestock died in Egypt and not in Goshen, not in the land of where the Israelites are. But again, that's not necessarily where we need to have the hard and fast rules. Really, since we're in the midpoint, I just want to take a second to recap some of the things that we have been learning as we've gone through the plagues. Number one, we're learning the meaning of salvation. Primarily, the meaning of salvation comes to us through the act of God's deliverance of his people. And that's what he's doing through all of this. We learn also the purpose of life as we're looking at these 10 plagues. What is the reoccurring thing that we're hearing from the Lord and from Moses when he is calling on Pharaoh to let his people go? What are they to do? Go and worship me. They need to leave here so that they can worship me. Not so that they can have a big, powerful nation, but so that they can worship God. We learn of the folly of idolatry within the Egyptian worldview. We learn of the supremacy of faith. Here is now another of the times that Israel is left alone, but the Egyptians are being attacked. This plague is hitting only the Egyptians, right? And so it's an important maybe notation that we can make as we start to go through this, is that we'll see this being more and more an attack on who? The enemies of God, not the people of God. So the supremacy of faith And then lastly, the consequences of rebelling against God. It is because of Pharaoh's hard heart that all of this is happening. It is because Pharaoh has saw it fit to be God in his own eyes. Exactly the sin of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Let me eat the fruit because I am in fact God. A few things to note as we look at this. Verse, look at verse 3. In verse 3, we notice it's no longer the finger of God that is being referenced by the magicians. It's not the finger of God, it's the hand of the Lord. There's a increasing intensity that is going on as we go through the plagues. Now, it's not a linear increase of intensity, but kind of almost an exaggerated exponential increase in intensity, but that's kind of its own point. This is the first plague where it's done, right? So with the blood, with the flies, with the gnats, with the frogs, Pharaoh is coming back to Moses and going, why don't you get rid of all of these things? No, here, all of the animals are dead. And so therefore, Pharaoh does not come back to Moses and go, hey, tomorrow, why don't you stop killing the animals? No, this is all happening all at once. And so this is the first time where we see this is done. And so Pharaoh does not come and ask for everything is already over, right? Another is Pharaoh sent, right? In this verse, it says Pharaoh sent messengers who saw that not a single of the animals of the livestock of Israel had died. Pharaoh is now finally, he's taking action. He's not taking action like he did before, where he said, I will let you go, just take away the plague. So lie, and then the thing is reversed, and so then his heart is hardened. But here he's going to go, oh, I'm going to send. And so we have this like little, just ever so slight hint that something is maybe changing in Pharaoh's heart. Pharaoh sent, but not the right people, right? Pharaoh sends, action is happening, but it's still misplaced. And then last we see his heart is still hard. Again, maybe we notice that there's no incentive for him to change his heart in this instance, right? The animals are dead, so why would I change my heart? We understand the animals are dead, so why should you change it? Because God's power is continuously being shown, and it's starting to increase. So Pharaoh, maybe wise up a little bit before more happens. So this is the 5th plague. We will continue on in the next one into the 6th plague. See you in the next one.